Good morning, students. Today we are going to discuss about ethics in governance. I'm starting my series of second ARC reports. The first in the line is ethics in governance. Already I have finished for most of them, or most of you, the corruption class. So this report becomes an extension to this corruption class. Now many students ask me how to improve the vocabulary with regard to the governance chapters. So this is the best way. You can just have the overview of all the chapters in the second ARC and you repeatedly listen to these terms or use these terms in your conversation. That improves your presentation of the governance answer many a times. The second thing is this. My classes on second ARC reports will progress like this. I will explain the outline of the report. I will make a small diagram of a particular chapter, and then through the diagram I try to explain that. What you need to do is always keep a pen and paper with you. Please write down what I am talking about. And the second thing is, at the end of the class, I will upload the notes to you. That notes mostly will be the important points covered by the second ARC and also a ready recorder map. Try to have both of them with you. The third thing is, if you have small recording device, whatever the notes which I am giving it to you, just record it, and whenever you get a free time, keep on listening to it. That increases your ability to reproduce the answer. It is not only good for governance chapter, it is also good for your essay writing. So let's start today's class. Now, what is the framework of this text? He is talking about chapter 1 introduction, and then you have the ethics in politics or ethical framework. And then we are going to focus on the legal framework and institutional framework, the social infrastructure, the systemic reforms. So with regard to ethical framework, ethics in public life, what are the various international examples? What is meant by office of profit? What is meant by conflict of interest? What are code of ethics? So try to have a conceptual clarity on these terms. Now this is what is the Prevention of Corruption Act 1988 is very important. And corruption involving the private sector, it is a very critical question for us. And till now UPSC did not touch this area. Though indirectly in the terms of corporate governance this year, it has posed a question about the Satyam scam, but this area is still virgin. And next is protection to whistleblowers. Yes, this area is asked as a question this year. And on the other hand, the institutional framework was asked as a question in 2012. Where Lokpal, how strong it may be, it cannot end the corruption completely in India. It is the question squarely fits into the institutional framework to fight against the corruption. And the social infrastructure to fight against the corruption, this is one area which is not asked by the UPSC. But when UPSC has asked about how strong the Lokpal may be, you cannot end the corruption, it means you also need to add certain points related to the social infrastructure. And all the terms in the chapter 6, importance of systemic reforms, promoting competition, just have these 17 terms on your fingertips at any point of time. So any question is asked in the UPSC, you can attempt them using these 17 points. And on the other hand, the list of boxes which are been given over here. So in this case, the examples, the various, for example, ethics in the UK, Ramsay MacDonald, what he said about it. So quote these examples and statements in your examinations. Just read this list of boxes. After this, so the 7 social sins of Gandhiji, it's very necessary. And examples of Satyendranath Dubey and Shanmugam are given in the whistleblowers. ICAC, Independent Commission Against Corruption, it was also discussed in the box. So have a complete reading of these particular boxes. Now, after this, let's move on to the today's chapter that is related to introduction. Now, the chapter proceeds like this. What is the meaning of an ethic, or what are ethics? And then, what is necessary to fulfill these ethics? And how the failure of ethics can manifest as? In this case, what are the reasons for the growing corruption in India? And how we shall tackle this particular corruption? So ethics are a set of standards which every society sets for itself. These are the lofty value systems the society has developed over centuries of its evolution. Now, how lofty these values may be, they will not become valid and functional unless they are associated with strong institutional mechanisms for their enforcement. So, institutions plus incentivization, these together will improve the good behavior or reward the good behavior, at the same time punishing the bad behavior. So, any standard to be implemented, you need to have a reward and punishment system plus a strong institutional mechanism to take them forward. So in this case, the ethics is a word which has come from the Greek word ethikos. It means arising from an habit. Similarly, corruption has come from corruptus, which mean to break or to destroy. So the very meanings explain, they are contradictory to each other. Now, corruption is seen as a failure of the ethical system in a particular society. Here there are two approaches which the people think of. In the first approach, the failure of value system in the society is considered as a reason for corruption. In the second system, the corruption is seen as a deviance or deviant behavior of few officials. So both of them are contradictory, but both of them are valid good for the corruption. A general degradation of the value system itself is leading to corruption. The other one says that the values are by and large will be intact. Certain deviant officers, they are leading to, their actions are leading to corruption. If I take the second interpretation, the corruption is generally an exception rather than a norm. In this context, in the case of India, the situation is the other way around. The corruption is a norm rather than an exception. So what are the reasons for this corruption? So there are three major factors. India as a society worships power. Wherever unchallenged authority and arbitrary power exists, their corruption is bound to increase. So wherever there is power, worshipping of power, the public officials believe that they are above the normal people, and their propensity to deviate from the rules will increase. And there is also asymmetry of power in the country. The second point is asymmetry of power. Here you have on one side the bureaucrats who are very much powerful, and if you see the society, most of the society is filled with a sense of despair and powerlessness. So in this context, this difference of power or asymmetry of power makes the citizens to lead or live at the mercy of the states. And another thing is over centralization of the authority. Whenever the distance between the authority and accountability increases, accountability fails to control the authority. In India, for such a big country, The decision makers are very few and they are concentrated at the highest level. And in between there are many intermediary levels before it reaches to the citizen. So in this context, wider number of levels in the hierarchy and this distance between accountability and authority is a factor that is leading to corruption. And another thing is, the monopoly and discretion increases the corruption. Competition and transparency, they decrease the corruption. Today in liberalized society, we are moving towards competition. And once this competition is been set, transparency and governance reforms along with that will improve the India's performance against corruption. In a liberalized society, as the scarcity of the goods decreases, understand, previously when we are on a socialistic path where the state was the helm of the affairs, the scarcity of the goods and services is the major reason that has provided for the discretion. But once the market economy comes up, the supply of the goods and services increases and also the choice to the people, that automatically reduces the corruption. But in a liberalization phase, the collusive corruption is bound to increase compared to coercive corruption. So one way the coercive corruption can come down, but on the other way, collusive corruption is bound to increase. So in this case, we need to control this collusive corruption through proactive vigilance and separate institutional mechanisms such as Serious Economic Frauds Office. The next thing is, the quality of politics determines the quality of fight against the corruption. If the young people believe that there is a level playing field in the politics and a place for integrity, honesty in the politics, then automatically the corruption comes down. But surprisingly, in India, the dominance of the centralized political systems with a leader-centric politics, the politics have become a huge zone or a factor for corruption. Finally, a citizen is a victim of corruption or is the unwilling victim of corruption. The reason being is his resistance to corruption is very dearly paid, and his experience shows that the resistance to corruption may cause delay, harassment, lost opportunity time, a loss of certainty and prediction in the job. So in this context, he tries to take corruption as a norm, and a lot of cynicism is prevailing in the functioning of the citizen. So these are the factors related to the corruption which are discussed over here. Now let us see this diagram what I have explained. First I have discussed what is an ethic. Now ethics are the lofty statements. They themselves are not sufficient to achieve the fight against corruption. So the ethics need to be implemented. We need to have strong institutions. Now if you take the power structure in the society, there is an asymmetry of power. India as society has a worship for the power. And on the other hand, the way the state has functioned in the initial days, how our economic policy has organized, it has led to the over-regulation, excessive state control, monopoly, discretion, and a scarce economy. And over-centralization, it has decreased the impact of the citizen control over the authority exercised by the public officials. And asymmetry of power, because the bureaucracy enjoys huge excessive power and there is a sense of powerlessness among the society. And the quality of politics is an important factor that determines the fight against the corruption. And the citizen an unwilling victim, citizen empowerment, and the liberalization phase. You know that liberalization phase led to the surplus of the goods, and our supply has increased. and the choices have increased, but liberalization also has led to the increase in the collusive corruption. So this is the essence of this particular chapter. Thank you very much and all the best.